The darkness wrapped around the mining station like a cold blanket. Empty corridors stretched in every direction, filled with nothing but silence and the distant hum of emergency power systems. Omega-7 had been dead for 3 years now, floating in the void between star systems, like a ghost ship waiting for someone to find it. The Ravager moved through these corridors with the patience of a true hunter. Its massive form stood nearly 8 feet tall, with muscles that could crush steel and claws that could tear through armor plating. The creature's yellow eyes could see perfectly in the darkness, scanning every corner and shadow for signs of its prey. These eyes had seen death across dozens of worlds, had watched countless victims fall before its terrible strength. For centuries, the Ravager had hunted the weak across the galaxy. It preferred soft targets, creatures that would run and scream before the inevitable end came. The fear in their eyes always made the kill sweeter. That was why it had come to this abandoned station when its sensors picked up a single life form. Moving through the empty halls, humans were perfect prey. The Ravager had studied them from reports sent back by other hunters. They were small, weak creatures with no natural weapons. Their skin was soft and easily torn. They had no enhanced senses, no natural armor, no deadly poisons or acids. They were just walking meat waiting to be harvested. The human on this station seemed especially helpless. The creature's sensors showed it moving slowly through the facility, carrying nothing but basic tools. It did not try to hide or run. It did not send distress signals or attempt to escape. It simply wandered through the empty rooms like it had all the time in the world. The Ravager found this behavior amusing. Perhaps this human did not even know it was being hunted. Perhaps it thought it was alone on this dead station, safe from any danger. The creature savored this ignorance, knowing how quickly that false security would turn to pure terror when it finally revealed itself. The station itself told a story of hasty abandonment. Equipment lay scattered across floors where workers had dropped it in their rush to leave. Emergency lights cast eerie red shadows on the walls. Computer terminals flickered with warning messages that no one was left to read. Whatever had happened here 3 years ago, it had been serious enough to make everyone flee without taking their belongings. This abandonment made the hunt even more perfect. There would be no rescue ships coming, no security forces to interfere. Just the Ravager and its prey, alone in the darkness with nowhere to run. The creature moved deeper into the station, following the human's heat signature through its enhanced vision. Every step brought it closer to another easy kill. The human seemed to be heading toward the engineering section of the station. The Ravager could smell its scent growing stronger, could hear the soft sounds of footsteps echoing through the metal corridors. Soon it would be close enough to see its prey directly, to watch the fear bloom in those weak human eyes before making the killing strike. The Ravager had killed humans before, but always in groups where others might interfere or try to help. This would be different. This would be pure, perfect hunting the way it was meant to be. One predator, one prey, and nothing else to complicate the ancient dance of death. As it moved through the station, the Ravager noticed strange markings on some of the walls, warning symbols in multiple languages, including human script. The creature could not read the words, but it recognized the universal symbols for danger and contamination. Whatever this station had been mining, it was clearly hazardous material. This knowledge did not concern the Ravager. It had survived in environments that would kill most creatures instantly. Toxic atmospheres, radioactive wastelands, the vacuum of space itself. A little contamination from some human mining operation was hardly worth considering. If anything, it made the hunt more interesting. The human's heat signature was getting stronger now. The Ravager could tell it was just ahead, probably in the main engineering bay where all the station's primary systems were located. The creature slowed its approach, wanting to savor these final moments before the kill. It had learned long ago that anticipation made the actual moment of death even sweeter. The engineering bay doors stood open, inviting the Ravager inside. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows across banks of computer terminals and control panels. The air recycling systems hummed quietly in the background, still working to keep the abandoned station habitable for no one. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even, but the Ravager knew its prey was close. The scent was overwhelming now, filling its sensitive nostrils with the smell of human fear and sweat. The creature's claws extended automatically, razor-sharp points. That had ended countless lives across the galaxy. Its muscles tensed in preparation for the strike that would end this hunt. The Ravager stepped into the engineering bay and saw its prey for the first time. The human stood with its back turned, working at one of the control panels like it had nothing more important to do. It was smaller than the creature had expected, wearing some kind of thick work suit that covered most of its body. Tools hung from its belt, simple devices that posed no threat to a predator of the Ravager's skill. This was going to be almost too easy. The human had not even noticed the death that now stood just meters away. The Ravager could cross that distance in less than a second, could end this hunt before its prey even knew it had been found. But where was the fun in that? Where was the terror that made killing worthwhile? The creature decided to announce itself, to give its prey those precious few seconds of fear before the end came. It stepped forward, deliberately making noise to alert the human to its presence. The sound of its claws clicking against the metal floor echoed through the engineering bay like a death knell. The human stopped working and slowly turned around. The Ravager prepared itself for the usual reaction of screaming terror, for the desperate attempts to flee or fight that always prove so futile. It flexed its claws and smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth that had torn countless victims apart. But when the human's eyes met its own, the Ravager saw something it had never seen in prey before. There was no fear in those calm human eyes, no panic or desperation. Instead, there was something that confused the creature completely. The human looked at the Ravager, like it was examining an interesting but harmless specimen, like it was studying something curious but not particularly threatening. The expression was so unexpected that the creature actually paused, uncertain how to react to this strange response from its intended victim. Marcus looked up from the control panel he had been working on and studied the massive creature standing in the doorway. He had known it was following him for the past 2 hours, had detected its presence through the station's still-functioning sensor grid. The thing was impressive, he had to admit. Nearly 8 feet of pure predator, built for killing with the kind of natural weapons that evolution spent millions of years perfecting. "You're the one who's been following me," Marcus said in a calm voice that echoed strangely in the large engineering bay. "I was wondering when you'd show yourself." The creature seemed surprised by his reaction. Marcus could see confusion in those yellow eyes, could almost watch the predator trying to process why its prey was not running or screaming. In his 15 years of working in hostile environments across the galaxy, Marcus had learned that predators always expected certain responses from their victims. Fear was their drug of choice, panic their favorite appetizer before the main course of violence. Marcus turned back to his work, fingers moving across the control panel with practiced efficiency. He had a job to do here, and the presence of one more dangerous creature was just another variable to account for. The sterilization protocol was complex, requiring multiple authorization codes and precise timing. He could not afford to rush it, even with death standing just a few meters away. "Hold on a second," Marcus said without looking up from the panel. "I'm almost finished here." The Ravager moved closer, its massive form casting shadows across the engineering bay. Marcus could feel the heat radiating from the creature's body, could smell the alien scent that marked it as something from a world very different from Earth, but he did not look up from his work. The authorization sequence was at a critical point, and one mistake would mean starting over from the beginning. Behind him, Marcus could hear the soft sound of claws extending, the subtle shift in the creature's stance that meant it was preparing to attack. These were the same warning signs he had learned to recognize in the hunting beasts of a dozen different worlds. Predators were remarkably similar across species when it came to their killing behavior. The creature spoke for the first time, its voice a deep rumble that seemed to come from somewhere deep in its chest. "You do not run," it said in accented, but understandable human speech. "You do not scream. Why do you not fear death?" Marcus finished entering the first authorization code and moved to the next panel. "Because I'm not the one who should be afraid," he replied simply. This answer seemed to confuse the Ravager even more. It had probably never heard prey speak with such confidence before. Most victims were too busy being terrified to engage in conversation with their killers. But Marcus had dealt with dangerous situations so many times that terror had become just another emotion he could choose to ignore when it served no useful purpose. The sterilization protocol was proceeding normally. All systems were responding within acceptable parameters. In approximately 10 minutes, every surface of the station would be flooded with purification plasma hot enough to sterilize even the most resistant biological agents. Nothing organic would survive the process, not even microbes or spores that might otherwise remain dormant for years. "I have killed many of your kind," the Ravager said, moving even closer. "They all feared death. They all begged for mercy, and the end, you will do the same." Marcus glanced over his shoulder at the creature, noting the confidence in its posture and voice. This was clearly an apex predator that had never faced a real challenge in its long hunting career. It moved with the assured grace of something that had always been at the top of the food chain, had never needed to worry about anything more dangerous than itself. "I'm sure you have," Marcus agreed. "But you've never hunted in a place like this." Before the second authorization code was complete, Marcus moved to the final panel, the one that would actually initiate the sterilization sequence. His fingers moved quickly but carefully across the controls, each input bringing him closer to completing his mission. The Ravager watched his movements with obvious impatience, clearly expecting him to abandon his work and focus on the more immediate threat of being killed. "This station has been quarantined for 3 years, Marcus explained as he worked. "The mining operation here wasn't extracting metals or rare elements. It was harvesting biological compounds, some of the most dangerous substances ever discovered. The whole facility is contaminated with materials that can kill most life forms in minutes." The Ravager's yellow eyes narrowed slightly. "You lie to create fear in yourself. Humans always lie when death approaches." Marcus entered the final authorization code and stepped back from the control panel. Warning lights began flashing throughout the engineering bay as the sterilization protocol activated. A computerized voice announced that all personnel should evacuate immediately, that the facility would be purged in 10 minutes. "I'm not lying," Marcus said, turning to face the creature directly. "And I'm not afraid. You want to know why?" The Ravager's massive form seemed to tense as the warning alarms grew louder. For the first time since entering the engineering bay, the creature appeared uncertain. The confident predator was beginning to realize that something was not quite right about this situation. Marcus reached up and activated a control on his worksuit. The helmet's heads-up display lit up, showing environmental readings that painted a very clear picture of their current situation. Radiation levels, atmospheric composition, biological contamination markers, all of them were far beyond what most life forms could survive. "Because I've been wearing a full environmental suit this entire time," Marcus said. "And you've been breathing contaminated air for the past 3 hours. The Ravager looked down at its own body, then back at Marcus. The human was indeed completely sealed inside his protective gear, breathing filtered air and protected from whatever toxic materials filled the station's atmosphere. The creature had been so focused on the hunt that it had not even considered the possibility that the environment itself might be dangerous. "The compounds this station was mining were designed as biological weapons," Marcus continued. "They're specifically engineered to be lethal to a wide range of species. The evacuation 3 years ago happened when a containment breach released them into the station's atmosphere." Warning lights bathed the engineering bay in red as the sterilization countdown continued. The Ravager realized that the human had been leading it deeper into the station, away from any possible escape routes. What it had thought was wandering prey behavior had actually been careful, deliberate movement designed to trap the predator in the most dangerous part of the facility. Marcus watched the creature's growing alarm with professional detachment. He had seen this same realization in the eyes of other predators when they finally understood that they were not the most dangerous thing in their environment. It was always the same moment when absolute confidence gave way to the first taste of real fear. "You've been poisoned," Marcus said matter-of-factly. "The contamination is already in your system, breaking down your cellular structure from the inside. Even if you killed me right now, you'd be dead within the hour." The Ravager's claws retracted slightly as it processed this information. The creature that had spent centuries as the hunter was beginning to understand what it felt like to be the prey. The Ravager stared at Marcus with growing disbelief as the warning alarms continued to echo through the engineering bay. The creature's enhanced senses, which had been such an advantage during the hunt, now worked against it. It could smell the chemical taint in the air that it had been breathing for hours. It could feel a strange tingling sensation in its lungs that had not been there when it first entered the station. "You speak lies," the Ravager said, but its voice lacked the earlier confidence. "I am immune to most toxins. My species has survived in hostile environments across the galaxy." Marcus checked his suit's environmental readings again. The contamination levels were even higher than he had expected, well beyond what any unprotected life form should be able to tolerate. The fact that this creature was still standing after hours of exposure was actually impressive, though it would not save the Ravager in the end. "The compounds this station was mining are different," Marcus explained. "They were specifically designed to overcome natural immunities. The research team here was trying to create the ultimate biological weapon, something that could kill any species regardless of their evolutionary defenses." The sterilization countdown reached 8 minutes. Marcus moved toward the exit, knowing that he needed to be in the sealed escape pod before the purification plasma flooded the station. The Ravager followed, but its movements had lost their earlier predatory grace. The creature was beginning to feel the effects of prolonged exposure to the contaminated atmosphere. "Why did you come here?" the Ravager asked. "If this place is so dangerous, why risk your life to enter it?" Marcus paused at the engineering bay doors and looked back at the creature. "Because that's my job. I'm part of a specialized team that handles cleanup operations for facilities like this one. We go into places that are too dangerous for normal people and make sure they can never hurt anyone again." The Ravager's yellow eyes were no longer quite as bright as they had been. The biological weapons were designed to attack the nervous system first, affecting vision and coordination before moving on to more vital functions. The creature was probably beginning to experience symptoms but might not recognize them yet. "You are not prey," the Ravager said slowly. "You are a predator like myself." Marcus considered this assessment as they moved through the station's corridors. "I suppose that's one way to look at it. But I don't hunt living things. I hunt dangerous situations and make them safe." This station contained enough contaminated material to wipe out entire star systems if it ever got loose. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows as they walked. Marcus could see that the Ravager was struggling more with each step, though the creature was trying to hide its growing weakness. Whatever species it came from, they were clearly tough to have survived this long with the level of contamination present in the station's atmosphere. "The evacuation 3 years ago was not complete," Marcus continued. "Several storage containers of concentrated biological agents were left behind when the research team fled. My job is to make sure those containers are destroyed before they can pose a threat to anyone else." They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 different directions. Marcus consulted his suit's navigation system and chose the path that led toward the station's docking bay. Behind him, the Ravager moved more slowly now, its massive form occasionally brushing against the corridor walls. "How long do I have?" the creature asked. Marcus checked his environmental readings again. The Ravager's breathing had changed, becoming more labored as the biological agents attacked its respiratory system. "Based on your size and apparent metabolism, probably 30 to 40 minutes before the contamination becomes fatal." The Ravager absorbed this information without visible emotion. "And the sterilization will kill everything regardless?" "Everything organic," Marcus confirmed. "The purification plasma reaches temperatures that break down molecular bonds. It's The only way to be completely certain that all traces of the biological agents are eliminated. They continued walking toward the docking bay. The Ravager's steps were becoming unsteady, and Marcus could hear the creature's breathing growing more difficult. Whatever species it came from clearly had impressive survival instincts, but even the most resilient life form had limits. You could have activated this sterilization when you first arrived, the Ravager observed. Why did you wait? Why allow me to follow you? Marcus had been expecting this question. Because I needed to make sure you were deep enough in the station that you wouldn't be able to escape. My job includes ensuring that nothing leaves this facility alive, including apex predators who might carry contamination to other worlds. The Ravager stopped walking and stared at Marcus. You used yourself as bait? I used myself as a guide, Marcus corrected. I needed you to follow me into the most contaminated areas of the station to guarantee exposure. If you had stayed near the docking bay, you might have been able to leave before the biological agents took effect. The creature's legs gave out suddenly, and it collapsed against the corridor wall. The Ravager's breathing was becoming increasingly labored as the contamination affected its cardiovascular system. Marcus could see the confusion and growing fear in those yellow eyes as the predator realized how completely it had been outmaneuvered. I have hunted for centuries, the Ravager gasped. I have killed thousands of creatures across dozens of worlds. I thought I understood what it meant to be an apex predator. Marcus knelt down next to the massive creature, maintaining a safe distance despite his protective suit. You understand hunting individual prey? But you don't understand humans. We don't just hunt things that threaten us individually. We hunt things that threaten our entire species or any species we decide to protect. The sterilization countdown reached 5 minutes. Marcus could feel the station's systems building toward the massive energy discharge that would purify every surface of the facility. The Ravager was dying, but it was still trying to understand what had happened to it. Your species sends individuals into places like this? The creature asked weakly. When necessary, Marcus replied. We have people who specialize in handling nuclear disasters, biological contamination, chemical spills, and situations that are too dangerous for normal response teams. It's what we do. The Ravager's eyes were losing focus as the biological agents affected its brain chemistry. I chose the wrong prey. Marcus stood up and checked his suit's navigation system again. The docking bay was still several corridors away, and he needed to reach the escape pod before the sterilization began. You didn't choose prey at all. You walked into a trap designed to catch things exactly like you. The massive creature slumped. Further against the wall, its strength finally failing as the contamination overwhelmed its biological defenses. The Ravager had learned too late that being an apex predator meant nothing when facing opponents who fought with intelligence rather than claws. Marcus left the dying creature in the corridor and continued toward the docking bay. Behind him, the warning alarms continued their countdown toward the sterilization that would erase all traces of the station's deadly cargo. The hunt was finally over, and for the first time in centuries, the Ravager had been the prey. Marcus reached the docking bay with 3 minutes remaining on the sterilization countdown. The massive space stretched out before him, filled with empty berths where ships had once been moored during the station's operational days. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the metal deck plates, and the constant hum of life support systems echoed off the walls. Behind him, he could hear the Ravager struggling to follow. The creature was clearly dying, but it still possessed enough strength to drag itself along the corridors. Marcus had to admire the predator's determination, even as he monitored his suit sensors to make sure the creature did not pose a last-minute threat. The escape pod bay was located at the far end of the docking area. Marcus moved quickly across the deck, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal surface with each step. His environmental suit's heads-up display showed that all systems were functioning normally. Air recycling was optimal and contamination levels outside the suit remained at lethal concentrations. The Ravager finally appeared in the docking bay entrance, using the wall to support its massive weight. The creature's breathing was labored and painful, each breath a struggle against the biological agents that were systematically shutting down its bodily functions. But its yellow eyes still tracked Marcus's movements with predatory focus. "The escape pod," the Ravager gasped, pointing a trembling claw toward the bay at the far end of the docking area. "There's only one left." Marcus had already noticed this fact. Standard protocol for abandoned facilities required that all but one escape pod be removed during evacuation, leaving a single unit for emergency use by cleanup crews. The remaining pod was rated for 2 occupants, though it would be cramped with a creature the size of the Ravager aboard. "You planned this," the creature continued, each word requiring tremendous effort. "You knew I would follow you here." Marcus checked the sterilization countdown again. 2 minutes and 30 seconds remained before the purification plasma would flood every section of the station. The escape pod's launch sequence required nearly 2 minutes to complete, which meant they needed to leave immediately or risk being caught in the sterilization. "I plan to complete my mission," Marcus replied. Everything else was just adapting to circumstances. The Ravager pushed itself away from the wall and began stumbling across the docking bay. The creature was clearly using the last of its strength to reach the escape pod, though Marcus doubted it would have enough coordination left to operate the launch controls. The biological contamination had progressed too far for the Predator to function effectively. Marcus reached the escape pod first and began the startup sequence. The small craft systems came online with a series of electronic beeps and status. Lights, life support activated, navigation systems initialized, and the airlock cycled open to admit passengers. Everything appeared to be functioning within normal parameters. "Wait," the Ravager called out weakly. "I cannot operate your human technology." Marcus paused with one foot inside the escape pod. The creature had stopped halfway across the docking bay, swaying unsteadily as the contamination continued its work. The Predator's earlier confidence had been completely replaced by desperate vulnerability. "You're dying," Marcus observed. The biological agents have already caused irreversible damage to your system. Even if I took you with me, you probably wouldn't survive the trip to the nearest medical facility." The Ravager's legs gave out again, and it crashed to the deck with a sound like falling machinery. The creature tried to push itself back up, but lacked the strength to support its own weight. The apex predator that had terrified countless victims across the galaxy was now helpless on the floor of an abandoned docking bay. "Please," the Ravager whispered. Marcus had never heard a predator beg before. In all his years of dealing with dangerous creatures and hostile environments, he had encountered plenty of aggressive species, but none that had ever asked for mercy. The sound was strangely disturbing, like hearing a mountain ask for help or watching a storm show fear. The sterilization countdown reached 1 minute and 45 seconds. Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He left the escape pod and walked back to where the Ravager lay dying on the deck. "Can you understand complex instructions?" Marcus asked. The creature nodded weakly. "I am not dead yet." Marcus helped the Ravager to its feet, supporting part of the creature's massive weight against his environmental suit. "There are sealed storage containers in Section 7 that contain concentrated biological agents. They're designed to survive standard sterilization procedures. Someone needs to manually destroy them before the purification begins." The Ravager looked at Marcus with confusion. "Why tell me this?" "Because I can't do it alone," Marcus replied. The containers require 2 separate activation keys to be turned simultaneously. It was a safety measure to prevent accidents during the research phase. They stumbled across the docking bay together, the dying predator leaning heavily on the human who had outsmarted it. Marcus's suit strained under the additional weight, but the servos and support systems were designed to handle heavy loads in hostile environments. "You would trust me to help you?" the Ravager asked. "I don't have a choice," Marcus said. "And neither do you. If those containers survive the sterilization, they'll eventually break down and release their contents into space. The contamination could drift for years before reaching inhabited systems." The sterilization countdown reached 1 minute and 15 seconds. They were cutting it very close. But Marcus calculated they still had enough time to reach Section 7 and destroy the remaining biological agents. The escape pod would have to wait until the job was finished properly. I could kill you, the Ravager pointed out. Take the escape pod for myself. Marcus glanced at the creature's trembling claws and labored breathing. You can barely stand up, and even if you could kill me, you don't know the activation sequence for the pod's launch controls. You'd die here along with everything else. They reached Section 7 just as the countdown hit 1 minute. The storage area contained dozens of sealed containers, each one marked with biological hazard symbols and warning labels in multiple languages. Most were empty now, but Marcus's scanner indicated that 5 still contained active biological agents. Those 5, Marcus said, pointing to the containers that needed to be destroyed. We have to activate the emergency destruction sequence for each one. The Ravager examined the control panels with its fading vision. 2 keys turned at the same time? Exactly, Marcus confirmed. I'll take positions 1, 3, and 5. You handle 2 and 4. When I give the signal, turn your keys as far as they'll go. The countdown reached 30 seconds. Marcus positioned himself at the first container and looked across at the Ravager, who had managed to reach the second unit despite its weakening condition. The creature's massive claws were poorly suited for delicate manipulation, but it managed to grasp the activation key. Now, Marcus shouted, both keys turned simultaneously. The first container's destruction sequence activated with a burst of flame that completely incinerated its contents. Marcus moved to the third container while the Ravager struggled toward the fourth unit. 15 seconds remained when they activated the final pair of containers. The biological agents were consumed in controlled explosions that left nothing but sterile ash and metal fragments. Marcus's scanner confirmed that no active contamination remained in the storage area. It's done, Marcus said. The Ravager collapsed one final time, its strength completely exhausted. But the creature was still breathing, still alive despite everything it had endured. Marcus helped drag the massive predator back toward the escape pod as the final seconds of the countdown ticked away. They reached the pod with no time to spare. Marcus hauled the Ravager through the airlock just as the sterilization sequence began flooding the station with purification plasma. The escape pod launched automatically, carrying both human and alien away from the dying facility as they drifted through space toward the nearest navigation beacon. The Ravager looked at Marcus with something approaching respect. I have learned something today, the creature said weakly. What's that? Marcus asked. Humans are not prey at all. The escape pod drifted through space at a steady pace, its small engines pushing them toward the nearest inhabited system. Inside the cramped passenger compartment, Marcus monitored the life support systems while the Ravager lay unconscious on the emergency medical bed. The creature's breathing had stabilized somewhat, though it remained weak and irregular. Marcus had administered every medical treatment available in the pod's limited emergency kit. The biological contamination had done serious damage to the Ravager's system, but the creature's natural resilience was keeping it alive. Whether it would make a full recovery remained to be seen. The communication system chimed softly, indicating an incoming transmission from a rescue ship that had detected their emergency beacon. Marcus opened the channel and provided his authorization codes along with a brief status report. The rescue team confirmed they would rendezvous with the escape pod in approximately 6 hours. The Ravager stirred on the medical bed, its yellow eyes opening slowly as consciousness returned. The creature looked around the small compartment with obvious confusion before its gaze settled on Marcus, who was seated at the control station monitoring their progress. I am still alive, the Ravager observed with surprise. The medical treatments seem to have slowed the contamination's progress, Marcus replied. You'll need proper medical care when we reach the rescue ship, but your vital signs have stabilized. The creature attempted to sit up but found it lacked the strength to support its own weight. The biological agents had left it weak and unsteady, a far cry from the confident predator that had stalked through the station's corridors just hours earlier. Why did you save me? The Ravager asked. I came to that station to kill you. Marcus considered the question while checking their navigation readings. Because you helped me complete the mission. The biological agents would have posed a threat to countless innocent lives if we hadn't destroyed them properly. The Ravager processed this explanation slowly. You value the mission more than personal revenge? I don't think about revenge, Marcus said. I think about getting the job done. Right. You were just another variable to account for, like radiation levels or structural instability. This response seemed to puzzle the creature even more. In its long experience as a predator, the Ravager had never encountered prey that treated a life-or-death situation as simply another work problem to be solved. The human's calm professionalism was unlike anything it had seen before. What will happen to me when we reach your people? The Ravager asked. Marcus pulled up the relevant regulations on his suit's display. You'll receive medical treatment for the contamination exposure. After that, it depends on whether you've committed any crimes in human space. Have you? The creature thought carefully before answering. I have killed humans, but not in your territory. My hunting has been limited to the outer rim systems beyond your government's jurisdiction. Then you'll probably be released once you're healthy enough to travel, Marcus said. Though I'd recommend avoiding human space in the future. We tend to take a dim view of predators who hunt our people. The Ravager absorbed this information with growing amazement. You would heal me and then let me go free? That's how our laws work, Marcus explained. We don't punish people for crimes they might commit in the future, only for ones they've already committed. Besides, I doubt you'll be hunting humans again after this experience. The creature was quiet for several minutes, processing everything. That had happened since it first detected Marcus on the abandoned station. The hunt that was supposed to be simple and easy had turned into a lesson in humility that the Ravager would never forget. I have misjudged your species completely, the Ravager admitted. We thought humans were weak because you lacked natural weapons and armor. We thought you were prey because you seemed helpless compared to apex predators like myself. Marcus checked the life support readings again. Everything was functioning normally, and they were making good progress toward the rendezvous point. Humans survive by being smarter than things that want to kill us. We can't outrun a predator or overpower one in direct combat, so we have to outthink them instead. The contaminated station was a trap, the Ravager said. You used my own hunting instincts against me. I used the situation to my advantage, Marcus corrected. You chose to hunt on that station without gathering proper intelligence about the environment. That was your mistake, not my trap. The creature's respect for human intelligence was growing with each exchange. The Ravager had always assumed that apex predators were defined by physical strength and natural weapons. The concept of intelligence as a hunting tool was foreign to its way of thinking. How many others like you exist? The Ravager asked. Others like me specifically? Maybe a few hundred specialists trained for contamination cleanup, Marcus replied. But humans in general? We have millions of people trained for dangerous situations. Military, medical, scientific, engineering. We specialize in solving problems that seem impossible. The Ravager tried to imagine a species where millions of individuals were capable of the kind of tactical thinking Marcus had demonstrated. The concept was both impressive and terrifying from a predator's perspective. I must warn my people, the creature said. They need to understand what humans really are. What will you tell them? Marcus asked with genuine curiosity. The Ravager was quiet for a long moment, organizing its thoughts. I will tell them that humans are not prey at all. They are apex predators who hunt differently than anything else in the galaxy. They do not use claws or teeth or natural weapons. They use their minds and their technology and their willingness to walk into the most dangerous places in the universe. Marcus nodded approvingly. That's probably accurate. I will tell them to avoid human space, the Ravager continued. Not because humans are too dangerous to hunt, but because they are too dangerous to underestimate. A species that sends individuals into contaminated stations to prevent disasters is not a species that any predator should consider easy prey. The communication system chimed again, indicating that the rescue ship had visual contact with their escape pod. Marcus could see the distant lights of the larger vessel through the small porthole, growing steadily brighter as it approached their position. "The rescue ship is here," Marcus announced. "They'll transfer you to their medical bay for proper treatment." The Ravager watched the approaching lights with something that might have been relief. "Will you tell them what happened on the station?" "I'll file a complete mission report," Marcus said. "It will include your assistance with destroying the biological agents. That should count in your favor if there are any legal complications." The docking procedure began with mechanical precision. The rescue ship's manipulator arms grasped the escape pod and guided it into the cargo bay. Within minutes, both Marcus and the Ravager were aboard the larger vessel, where medical personnel immediately began treating the creature's contamination exposure as they were separated for processing. The Ravager looked back at Marcus one final time. "Thank you for showing me what humans truly are." Marcus nodded and headed toward the debriefing room where he would spend the next several hours explaining everything that had happened on the abandoned station. Another mission completed, another dangerous situation resolved through careful planning and professional competence. Behind him, the Ravager was taken to the medical bay, where it would recover from its exposure to the biological agents. But, more importantly, it would carry a new understanding of humanity back to its own people. The galaxy's apex predators had learned to recognize other apex predators, and humans had earned their place at the top of the food chain through intelligence, preparation, and the courage to face any danger in defense of innocent lives. The age of hunting humans for sport was about to come to an end, not through violence or threats, but through the simple realization that some prey was too dangerous to be worth the risk.